Should you cancel your SAT or ACT test score? That's exactly what I'm going to go over in this video. I'm Kristina of Ivy Lounge Test Prep, and for 15 years, I've been helping high schoolers around the globe dramatically raise their SAT and ACT test scores and ultimately get into the colleges of their dreams. So I want to paint a picture of a scenario that I hope you never experience yourself, but that encounters an SAT or an ACT test taker from time to time. And it goes a little bit like this. You just finished sitting for the digital SAT or for the ACT, and you're already convinced that you bombed it, right? You normally finish your English section in time, but today you barely could bubble your last answer before the proctor said time. Or maybe it's the digital SAT and you just did not get to like the last several questions of that first or second reading writing module. You had real trouble understanding certain passages in the reading section or in the reading writing module. And when it got to math, you're like, oh my gosh, I swear I have never seen this concept before. Matrices, anyone? Or you just didn't have time to do a lot of them, or it just felt so much harder than normal. You feel certain, like 100% certain that you screwed up big time. Like obviously you should cancel your score, right? So while canceling your score is an option, it's one that you want to approach calmly and rationally, okay? Rather than in like the post-test heat of the moment. And like my middle name is like calmly and rationally. So I have helped hundreds of my past students deal with this exact problem. So first, I'm going to outline some situations where canceling your SAT or ACT score probably is the best strategic move. Then I'm going to talk about a bunch of scenarios where you're better off taking a deep breath and just accepting the discomfort of a possibly lower than hoped for score. And then finally, I am going to share a real past scenario with you that I hope will give you some optimism about this. So let's get started. So canceling your digital SAT or your ACT test score should basically be reserved for situations that kind of border on emergencies. So because they're the ones that are likely to have seriously impacted your score in the first place. So this is a list of reasons why you might actually want to cancel your digital SAT or your ACT score. Maybe there was a medical or a family emergency that came up and you had to leave the exam early and like you did not finish it. Okay. Maybe you arrived to the test center late and you missed a huge chunk of a section or a module, or even more than like one section or module. Now, usually they might not even let you into the test center if that is the case, which would be like a third one, right? Like you arrived and you didn't get to take the test because you weren't allowed in. So in that case, there's nothing to cancel, but same idea. Maybe you fell asleep. I'm not joking. This is like actually happened. I shouldn't be laughing, but you fell asleep in the middle of your test and you did not finish it. Maybe you got sick and you excused yourself in the middle of the math section or the math module and you were throwing up. And sadly, you were there for like 15 minutes. So you're like not getting this time back. This is another one that like really happened. And I really hope it doesn't happen to you because it's really bad. Maybe you were passing a kidney stone. I'm not even joking. This literally happened to a past student of mine. And it put you in debilitating pain for like the entire science section of your ACT. And that meant you hardly finished it. And wherever you were in the test, you did not finish anything beyond that. Okay. Maybe your calculator battery died because you forgot to charge it the night before and you like couldn't answer questions without it. So like that would be if you're an ACT person. If you're taking the digital SAT, maybe it's your computer, your laptop, your tablet, it ran out of battery and you did not have a power cord. No one had a power cord. They could not help you. And so your test, it's just like done. Okay. Maybe you're taking the ACT and your pencil broke, or there was no sharpener and the proctor didn't have another, or your pencil wasn't number 2. Anyway, like for some reason you could not bubble the bubble sheet and no one could help you. Okay. So in catastrophic scenarios like the ones I just mentioned, You know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you couldn't have possibly performed anywhere near the score that you're used to doing because you like couldn't even finish the test, okay? Or you had to leave early or you missed a lot of time. So in circumstances like these, yeah, you're probably better off canceling your score because you know it's going to not show you off at all to your capabilities. Especially if you happen to have a school or college on your college list that does not allow for score choice, meaning that they're going to see every single score that you perform, that you earn, then yeah, that would be another reason why in this case where you like missed half a section or half a module or ran out in the middle of the test, you're canceling your score. Okay? Usually, if this were to happen to you, which I really hope it does not, you can simply tell the proctor during the test, like before you leave the testing center, like right then and there that you want to cancel your score, and your exam will not even be graded. Okay. So this is true for both the SAT and for the ACT. So those are reasons why you would actually want to cancel your score. So if you're just tuning in, my name is Kristina, and again, for a decade and a half, I've helped students all over the globe drastically raise their SAT and ACT test scores and ultimately land their dream colleges. So now I have a question for you, which is, have you ever been in one of those situations that I just listed? Or have you known a friend of yours or a sibling, an older sibling, who had one of those things happen and had to cancel a score? So if so, write it in the notes below. I am very curious as to what happened and like why they or you canceled your score. And while you're at it, just go ahead and like this video and also subscribe to my channel. And then that way, you will be the first to know every week when I give you the latest in SAT, ACT, and college application essays, advice, tips, and updates. So now let's talk about some situations in which you should not permanently cancel your SAT or ACT test score, okay? You didn't answer a few questions in a section or a module that usually you finish with time to spare. Or there were some questions that cover topics you're positive you have never gone over, like law of cosines, anyone? The English, math, reading, or science section, or the reading, writing module, or the math module section just seemed way harder than normal, way harder than you've ever done in your practice tests. Or maybe you always ace the reading section on your practice tests, but this time, like one of the passages, like really stumped you, and you truly did not know what it was talking about. Or in the reading writing section, you truly didn't understand what like half the texts were talking about. You felt more anxious than you've ever been while taking a test. Or maybe you were distracted by the guy who was like drumming with a pencil on his desk, and you swear that that distracted you so much that you're sure it hurt your score. Or perhaps you like left the test center and you just had a really bad feeling about your performance. Okay, do you see the difference between this list that I just said and the previous list that I told you, right? It's a matter of emergency versus feeling unease, or a crisis versus a slip up, okay? If you're still convinced, though, that your situation means that you should nix your score, I do have a story that hopefully will help you make the right call. So here goes. So not too long ago, a student of mine, for the sake of privacy, let's call her Micaela. That's not actually her name, but Micaela for our story here. She called me after she got out of her SAT, and she was freaking out. Okay. She was like, and this was actually before the digital SAT took over. So it was the past version a couple years ago, but same thing. Okay. She was like, Kristina, the math section was terrible, right? It felt so much harder than normal. What else did she say? I had no idea how to even approach two of the questions. I just had to guess. Also, one of the reading passages was super hard. I truly didn't know what it was talking about. I did not understand it at all. Should I cancel my score? And then she started talking about how her cousin had canceled her score, but then she ended up getting the score she wanted when she retook the test a few months later. Okay, so I was on the phone with her for like 15 minutes. And after asking her like a bunch of questions about all the different sections, I determined that like the only concrete thing that had actually happened in the test was that there were a few math and a few reading questions that Micaela more or less guessed on. Like she still put in her letter of the day and guessed on it and bubbled something. But she was still in tears because she normally could get through everything, and this time she could not. All the other things that she said were like bad omens that were like subjective, right? She had hard sections, hard questions, hard passages, and it was about how she felt. So these are subjective things if something is easy or hard or how you feel about it, right? So I convinced Micaela not to cancel her scores. And I gave her many reasons. So I'm going to tell you all the reasons why, because this might help you with your decision-making process. Okay. So if she thought, first of all, that the math section was hard, that probably meant that like a lot of other students also thought the math section was hard. Okay. And oftentimes this might mean that the curve, like the scoring rubric for that test, is actually a little bit more forgiving than normal, right? So if like everyone's missing more questions, then chances are you could probably miss a few more questions and get a higher score than a different test. Okay. So that's one thing. The next thing, okay, she thought the reading passage was super hard and harder than usual. So the same kind of like curve logic still applies here, okay? And here's the other thing. Micaela was naturally like a really gifted reader. So even if she thought it was hard, I guarantee you that meant a ton of other students also probably thought this was hard. And so even if she, missed a couple more questions than she normally would, I'm sure she would have still probably been in one of the top percentiles of test takers. The third reason, okay, is that many of her schools super scored, meaning that they would take her highest math score and her highest verbal or reading and writing score across test dates, even if they did not happen on the same test date. So she had already locked in a 770 in reading writing before. And we needed her to super score to a 1500. So she could have bombed the reading writing for all we cared. If her math got to 730, she would achieve her super score. See? So that was the third reason. The next is all but one of her schools on her list, like on her college list, accepted score choice. So meaning that even if she had like a really low score, she could just choose to not send them that test date score. Okay. So there would be only one school on her list that would have to see that score. Only one admissions committee that would ever see it if she in fact bombed. The fifth reason, it was we wanted to keep up her momentum, right? Because test prep, it is a marathon, it is not a sprint. And if she canceled her score when there was even a chance that we could like learn something from it or even like look at, okay, well, it was the craft and structure that I missed most on, so let me focus on that. If you cancel your score, it never gets graded, so you never learn about what you miss more of, and you never have anything to go over, and you don't have a direction for what to drill and what to focus on to improve the next time. And so I did not want her to be in what I call test prep limbo, because then it's like I knew, like psychologically, it would be hard for her or any student to like fully recommit to the process to take the test the next time, if that were the case. So I didn't want her momentum to be interrupted. And then finally, the last reason I gave her was like there are only finite number of test dates for either the SAT or the ACT. Like there's only like 7 test sittings a year, right? So unless like a real catastrophe strikes, you should at least learn what score you get before you put the kibosh on it, right? So you'll never see your score if you cancel. Do you want to know what happened? So Micaela followed my advice. She did not cancel her score, okay? And she ended up getting a 730 in the math. And it was a surprise for her because remember, there were a couple questions that she had to guess on, but like, I guess she had gotten everything else right because she got a 730 in the math. Now, her verbal wasn't as good as that 770 that she had already locked in, but it didn't matter because her school basically all super scored. So guess what? She achieved her super score of a 1500. And what's even more, she decided that she just wanted to take one more test. And in that one, she actually got a 1540 and then super scored to a 1550. So she surpassed her target scores. Okay. So it would have been like really unfortunate if she had missed out on that and then kind of like messed up her whole testing momentum by canceling the score and never finding out what she got. Right. And it would be really unfortunate if you missed out on a score that's better than what you feared, right? Because of panic, because of self-doubt, or just not really understanding like how the test works and how this whole like standardized testing process and college game even works. Okay. So sometimes, as we said, there are some real reasons you might want to cancel your score. So in the show notes, I'm going to include a couple blog posts for how you would cancel an ACT score or how you would cancel an SAT score if in fact you really do fall in that category. But otherwise, don't cancel your score. And if you do need more help with this whole game of standardized testing, I actually have a free resource for you. It's a free class. It's called your Fail-Proof College Prep Plan. You can register for it in the link below.